Hello, Tennessee Voices viewers and listeners. This is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the USA Today Network Tennessee and the Tennessean. Today, I have the pleasure of having as my guest Brenda Freeman, who's a retired mayor and county executive with experience in California, now in Tennessee. And we're going to be talking about a variety of subjects from women in politics to looking at the way government works and all sorts of things in between as well. Brenda, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about a passion of yours, which is about women in politics and involvement. If you could tell a little bit about your own origin story and also how you gained this passion.
Sure. Well, it started when I was in high school, actually. And I believe I was 16 or 17 when I officially and formally took an interest. I mean, as a kid, I would often watch the news with my father and ask a lot of questions. But in high school, one of my mentors and advisors in AVID, I don't know if you're familiar with AVID, but it's a program advanced via individual determination and encouraging students to go to college who otherwise may have not had someone talking to them about it or parents that went. And he encouraged me to run for office. And during that time, I was going into being a senior in high school. They would not allow the ESL classes, the English second language classes, to vote. And although I was a junior at the time going into being a senior in high school for student body president, vice president, I thought it just didn't seem right that they wouldn't allow me to speak to these classes because they're not voting. So we spoke to the principal and some of the administration, and from then on they were able to vote. And it just clicked. Like, if you could have a small impact like that in your surrounding, what can you do outside of high school? And so that's when my mentor said, well, who do you think your mayors, your senators, so on and so forth, this is what they do, for others. And so it was at that time that I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then later, I would often volunteer or participate in any way I could. And then, of course, at 22, I saw an ad in the paper and I called many groups, women's groups of all sorts. I didn't get any calls back. And so when the ad in the paper was open to run for office, I thought, I've always wanted to do this. Here we go.
Well, that's impressive, just that initiative that you have just to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to serve my community. And, I always wonder about that call when I've spoken to other current or former public officials. Some of them, say they were encouraged to run, others just felt this drive. How did you see this call, and tell us a little about what happened next when you heard this call?
Well, at the time, I was actually in college. And so I hadn't completed my bachelor's degree. My major was political science / government. And so I was learning as I was going. And so I recently had moved from San Diego County over to Riverside County and wanted to get involved. And so again, I wasn't getting the calls back. I wanted to get involved. So what greater thing to serve than be able to, take an active role. And previously I'd been on student advisory commissions for the cities, and thought, okay, well, it doesn't hurt to try. You never really know. But there was a lot of lack in the community that I felt was needed, and there was not a voice. The kids needed a skate park, and they were being asked to raise the money. I mean, not very many 8 and 10-year-olds can raise 100,000 or more, to build a skate park. The pool in the middle of the summer in over 100-degree weather was closed for the summer. And it just was really, there wasn't a lot for the kids to do. So I felt like if I could just do those two things, I would be super happy and feel like my job there during that time, and I'm glad to say that we were able to do those things and more, in that time.
And I think one of the things that is also remarkable about you is that you are one of the few Americans to have a doctoral degree. And Tell me a little bit about that process, because you have this combination of public service, work, all those other things. I mean, that is obviously a challenge and a great achievement.
It was, I have to say, it was not easy. But I am a proud graduate of University of Southern California, USC. And having that doctorate degree, it took a little bit longer, but, having to work, and then in the middle of it all, having a baby, and but it's not so much the time that it takes, it's that you never give up, you keep going. And so I was determined to finish. And my research is focused on increasing training participation for low-income families, or for families looking to move into to be more stable, and taking a look at and talking with folks who are using the programs and saying, hey, we're finding that you've used this several times. Why is that? And looking at, is it a knowledge problem? Do they not know about these resources? Is it a motivational problem? Are they not motivated? Or is it an organization problem, that the organization isn't really telling them how and what to do, or how they can get through it? And are we lacking these life coaches to help them out of poverty? So why aren't they, at the crux of it, participating in these awesome programs that can help them out of the situation? And I was surprised, but very happy to find that a lot of these families are very inspired. Like, they know what they want to do. They're very clear and specific on their goals. They have goals, they have aspirations. They just need the roadmap. They need that life coach to show them, okay, from A to B, from B to C. So it was definitely not a motivation problem. Like, sometimes society will peg, they just don't have the motivation to try, or to work hard. No, they're working very hard, and oftentimes at a very low wage. And so these programs could definitely facilitate and foster the home ownership. But we also got to look at the basics and how we get to that next step.
And so you have taken your life and your family from California, from the LA area, all the way to Middle Tennessee. This is a journey that many Californians have been making over the last few years to the region. What drew you to Tennessee?
I just have to say, we absolutely love it here. And, besides like the green, all the green everywhere, and the beauty of Tennessee, we looked in Arizona, we looked in Nevada, Texas, and we just kept making our way. And once we got here, it was just like, it felt home. We just knew this was it. And we kept coming back and looking, and every time, every season, it just felt right. And so we love it here. And oftentimes we would meet people in Tennessee who moved here, and they would say, I'm never going back. Well, guess what? We're never going back. It's just that we fell in love with the people and the communities. It is the volunteer state, and we have a heart to volunteer, so it just fit for us well.
That's one of those things that I think is important for people to understand, that especially in the community, when you come up the community, there's a desire for people in this region and the Nashville area to really support the community and also be of the community. And it's good to hear that you felt welcome since you've been here.
Definitely. And we, again, it's an awesome place to raise our 2-year-old, and just happy to be here. So thank you.
I'm glad that you're getting that welcoming. I know there's some other areas that are like, California, what? Californians are coming here? But I think we want to welcome people who come here. I'm obviously a transplant, so I'm not from Tennessee myself. But it's been interesting to see those growth patterns, because you have a issue of quality of life. You've got obviously the tax situation is far better than certain states, either from the East Coast or the West Coast. And you have that nature, that aspect of it, because I too was drawn to the greenery and the water, and it's a different type of water. I'm spent most of my adult life in Florida, so it's a different type of water, but it's it certainly is beautiful.
Right,
sure.
And the music and the food. I mean, who can't miss pass that up for sure.
Well, before we continue, I always like to ask my guests if they would talk a little bit about what they've been doing to stay healthy and well during the time of the pandemic. This show started in March of 2020 when the pandemic emerged, right after the pandemic emerged in Tennessee. And so, what are the things that you're watching or doing or streaming and reading to help you with your own mental health and wellness?
Yes. So in the last, I'd say 4 to 5 months, I've been trying to focus on my health. And so one big thing is having the tracker on the phone or like basically on your watch and carrying it and watching those steps. So doing my best to get those 10,000 steps in, which is sometimes hard. And sometimes easy depending on where you are and where you're going. Um, and just keep moving. I've been joining, like, doing different classes, Zumba, or dance classes. I just tried a hip hop class last week and it was awesome. It's been a long time since I moved around that much. But yeah, so tracking my points, you're doing, and just taking moments to just breathe and and enjoy like the basic parts of life, and be in the moment, because so many times we get so busy and by the end of the day you're like, did I get everything on the checklist? And sometimes that checklist isn't as important as just taking the moment to just be happy and like notice like the weather is amazing today, appreciating that.
That's very true. We're recording this on February 15th, and it is an absolutely beautiful day here in the Nashville area. One of the things that when I first received your bio, I was really impressed with your background, from your doctorate, being a former executive director of community action. You've won the Cesar Chavez Award. You've had a series of accolades for the public service work that you've done, as well as your volunteerism. One of the things that in writing about that, one of the things also that has been emphasized is the fact that you also come from a Latino background, and that can be significant in Tennessee. The Latino community has only begun to grow. The South is the fastest growing area for Latinos in the country, and Tennessee has certainly grown significantly from 4% in 2010 to nearly 7% today. Could you talk a little bit about what your background has meant to you in your career, and how you see yourself as a leader within the context of your heritage?
It's definitely something to be proud of. And I will never forget like some of the last words my father said. He's like, never forget where you came from. And that is so important, to remember your heritage, your history, your family's history. My father's side was from Mexico, Aguascalientes and Guadalajara. And on my mom's side, they're European. So you get a Portuguese, Spanish, a good blend of a little bit of everything. And so being in office and working with everyone from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to, there's just, it was so neat. Even the community that I represented, they had a Hmong chamber, and you get so much when you bring everyone together and you learn about different cultures. You go places to learn about it. You try different foods and listen to different music. And that's another thing that I love about Nashville. It's very diverse. And when I tell my friends who've never been here that, they are kind of taken aback, like, diverse Nashville. And it's something I feel like I learn about every week, or when I meet new people from different countries, from different states. And so I just, being in office and incorporating that piece, it was so key, and I think having everyone at the table and giving them that sounding board for, hey, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? Like, because collectively you can do so much more when you're getting different input. It may not be exactly what you had in your mind, but it doesn't have to be, because sometimes it's so much better than you would have even imagined.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because the diversity aspect is one sometimes of perception, and I too, when I moved to Nashville almost 8 years ago, people were asking me, is this, what do you have to like country music? And I've learned to appreciate country music greatly. I really enjoy it and enjoy the stories and behind the stories. But you also get to understand that diversity is about ideology, it's about background, it's about heritage, it's about race, and all these things where we can create these really wonderful conversations. What are some of the lessons that you learned from your time as a county mayor and executive that helped you become more empathetic and perhaps more effective at crafting these discussions that are important?
Oftentimes it's working at all levels. You may be an elected or you may be a director, but you have to see everything from different angles. So sometimes if that means working in the front counter, if that means, going to the events and working the booth, you want to talk to the people you're serving. You want to hear from them directly. And there's different ways to do that. Oftentimes we employed secret shoppers, taking a couple of plays from the playbooks of private sector, and looking at efficiencies, but also listening and also sitting in the seat that the person who's receiving services sits in. What do they see? Are they looking at a counter that's full of graffiti, that's dirty, that's not been wiped down, that doesn't have any pamphlets to give them information on what to do or where to go next? Or do they feel like they're in a top-notch place that really cares about their feelings? How do they feel when they walk in the door? Are they greeted? Just so sometimes it goes back to just simple things. And then as an organization, what is your plan? And also, how are you holding yourself accountable? How are you holding your employees accountable that these families are succeeding, that these families are getting the services you're paid to do? And that's when you're winning, when you feel like, hey, this year compared to last year, we not only did we, it's not so much about serving more people, it's that sometimes in places you want to serve less because they're becoming successful, right? It's not, okay, we're a poverty agency and we went from serving 500 to 1,000, not good, unless they're different people, right? But if you're serving the same people and you're doubling the amount, something's wrong with what's happening on the outskirts. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is, for me, learning about people's backgrounds and how they approach it. I think that as we try to create a better community, it's about taking those different approaches and understanding, the community around them. And so I appreciate you sharing that perspective. It's very interesting in talking to elected leaders. There sometimes can be the tendency to become separated from the people that you serve because the role can become so big. How do you keep a level head?
Mm-hmm. I think also, in addition to listening to the people you serve, it's talking to the people who work and do the job, the staff, because there can be compassion fatigue, not only in the staff, but amongst the electeds, because sometimes you feel like you're being judged, you're being criticized, you're being blamed, everyone's angry. It's like, but you have to be motivated because you have a drive to help. And so you have to just let that roll and continue focused on what the end mission is, because otherwise it can set in with you as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you very much. As we're coming to the conclusion of our episode, I just want to thank you very much again, Brenda Freeman, retired mayor and county executive, mom, and relatively new Tennessee resident. Welcome again to the area. Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests if they leave our audience with some words of wisdom to help them get through this challenging time.
The best words of wisdom I could say is just so simple. And, I firmly believe it. Like, oftentimes we'll double guess ourselves when we're trying to help, to serve, to do something. And from the simple words, that were said by Cesar Chavez, like, si se puede, like, you can do it. And you have to tell yourself that, like, you can do it, and, I had a mentor who, worked closely, with in different movements. And a lot of times you tell yourself that, or like, I know we spoke before, I mentioned like, one of Tom's mentors, and same thing, he was the attorney for Cesar Chavez. And sometimes you want to quit, you want to give up, but you have to find that drive. And one of my good friends, she always would say, like, you found your chutzpah, that was how she would say it. But, again, it's just like, believe in yourself and believe in what you're doing. Because when you have that vision, you have the passion, regardless of anything that tries to come across in a negative way, it will get you through.
And you were referring to Tom, your husband,
Yes,
who
I'm sorry.
as well. No, that's all right. And he had mentioned he speaks very glowingly of you. So I'm very glad that he made the introduction between us. He's written a few op-ed pieces. And so I am delighted to have you on the show today. Welcome again to Tennessee, and may you stay well and healthy. Best to you.
Thank you so much.